All right, let's get into a whole slew of layer 2 applications and projects, and also some of the evolutions of some of the major L1s that are starting to make big strides. We'll get into all that for you guys today and how it's going to help crypto, I think, in the long run. I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is Tangem. If you're looking at doing, self-custody, this is one of the things that we recommend that you guys take a look at. The wallet is pretty slick. This is Tangem. They've kind of redefined the whole experience. I would agree that, the use case of their card and app is pretty slick, as you can kind of see right there on screen. Very easy to use, very fast to set up. And the cool thing is it's super secure. So there's a lot going on in the Tangem technology. What I would do is recommend you guys go over to Tangem.com and just click on the little blue button and get the 3-card set. It's the best way to go. Use our code and you guys can kind of get into it. All right, so I want to go over to a couple of tweets here. We'll get into this one right here. Just in, and of course we're announcing this just like we would announce a Solana outage or anything else, but just in, Polygon zkEVM blockchain sees a 12-hour ongoing outage. This happened over the weekend. A lot of people were concerned about it. As you look here, this was pretty much their statement. It says this only impacts the zkEVM mainnet beta and does not impact Polygon POS or the CDK or any chain deployed using Polygon CDK. So that at least was some relief, but this does show that all of these projects continue to struggle in this area. Now, when you have projects that struggle like this, you have to kind of consider the challenge that everybody's going to be facing on being able to roll out. This, of course, was Robbie talking about this being Immutable X, IMX, talking about this and what it might mean for their own. And this was talking about the Immutable zkEVM launching out of early access. And this is probably not going to happen immediately. So that's probably going to see some slowdown coming into the space. And Polygon, among many other layer 2s, have been one of the, I think, the shining stars. But at the same time, when you start to see large amounts of advancements in these blockchains and then use case, meaning transactions and things of that nature coming in, that's where scalability starts to really dial into the situation. Emin Sarer, who is the CEO over at AVAX, came in and piped in on this. I'm going to zoom in on this for you guys. He made a couple of points here. There's a lot of red flags in the market, and this is something that you should be aware of. But also the thing that he wants you to be aware of in these layer 2s, because there's going to be a lot of layer 2s that will come in and say, hey, we've solved the problem. This is the new, widget for scalability. And his statement is project narrative does not match project tech. Example is centralized sequencers in layer 2s that lack fraud proofs that are trash. That is at odds with crypto. And that means more around the idea of decentralization. Remember, Polygon claiming and trying to get to a decentralized status. And I think that's the biggest narrative of crypto that continues to be, I think, one of the strongest, and that is the decentralization of it. So you don't have single point of failure. I also want to get into a clip here. We're going to go over to clip 1 here, which is Emin, also Avalanche, talking a little bit more about Polygon. Listen in.
Because if you're in the business of, let's say, protecting yourself from rainfall, there will be a bunch of people who come up to you and they'll offer you all sorts of different things, different kinds of hats perhaps. And sometimes, like initially, I think what they'll offer you is a basic hat, right? And then after a while, they try different variations, the gallon hat, the bowler hat. And at some point, people start running out of ideas and they start trying to pretend that they have something novel by giving you the same old hat, but with a feather on it, and then maybe with 2 feathers on it, and maybe like a bead on it, and so forth. And those things are not novel. It's important to recognize what's novel, what's different, and what's fundamentally a leap in rain protection when someone with an umbrella shows up. If you're blind, if you're just buying and selling these hats or rain protection gear, an umbrella might seem the same to you as a hat with beads on it. But I assure you that when you're in a torrential downpour, you want the umbrella, you don't want that stupid hat.
All right, so interesting metaphor there of how he explained that. But that's the point, is that there's going to be a lot of, we'll just say, posers that most likely will be coming into a lot of these challenges. And this is the thing about crypto, just like any tech really, is that when a technology hits the wall, we're going to see it in AI, you'll see it around all sorts of advancements in technology in the future as well. When it hits a wall, scalability or capacity or narratives around that will start to be addressed. And those usually are addressed with new tech. All right, so here was Sandeep, which is, we believe he is no longer in the team of Polygon, but is somehow supporting Polygon. But this is Sandeep, who was the former CEO at Polygon. He's basically kind of shouting back, saying, hey, I want these guys to keep talking while we keep building. Within that, there's another clip I want to play that gets into a little bit more of this. And when you look at this, I want to kind of break down where Avalanche is, where Solana is, because all of these are struggling with scalability in essence. And this is MN talking a little bit further about this. Listen in.
I will remind you that those same people also invented many other terms that turned out to be infeasible. They did not get us there. Like things that were supposed to get us to scale weren't sufficient. There's one sound approach to this. I think it was done. I think the only sound approach to sharding a blockchain, and what he did it's for good reasons involves quite a bit of heavy machinery. That's one path of trying to separate these things that are separate. There's another way to do this, and that is to create separate chains and allow them to seamlessly communicate with each other. That's the path we took with Avalanche. We knew how to shard, but we decided not to do that. We knew how to build a fast single chain. We did that. And we knew that a fast single chain wasn't going to get us there. There's no single fast chain that is the world's answer to all of the world's problems. That's just by definition not possible. Only Avalanche, Polkadot, and Cosmos support this architecture. And these other two have other components in it that are centralized. And one of them also got taken in by this bogus argument about shared security, which means that they're not really actually going to be able to scale. So it's some bad architectural choices that they made. Can you do this with any of the new coming chains that are on the scene? The answer is a resounding no.
All right, so there's a bit of pushback from the powers that be, whether you think about Avalanche or look at what's happening within the Solana ecosystem. And then if you look at some of the analytics that are happening out there in terms of transactions, this kind of shows just the L2s, zk syncs. There's base, of course, really exploding. Let me kind of zoom in on that for you guys so you can kind of see how that's happening right there. Optimism. And Ethereum, of course, we already know. And then you've got Solana, of course, right there, also really starting to take up. And if you look further into it, I mean, pretty much last 30 days, there's that, of course, Radium being on Solana. There's swaps on Radium. So further into the chart here on Dune, you can kind of see the transaction numbers here on Base starting to really ramp up here. Again, this is one of the projects, the L2s, that benefited the most from Dencun, the upgrade on Ethereum for L2s. Active address is also going up. Now, this is happening pretty much at the same time that we're dealing with situations over on the Solana network. This is a clip that talks about one of the games that we've talked about here on the show and what that looks like in terms of fees. Listen in.
The other question that's come up a lot this week is these blockchain fees for hatching and breeding, and people are getting mad at us. I just want to let you guys know, there is no profit for us in this. In fact, we hate this also because we actually pay the SOL that's required on your behalf. And so when you're minting an NFT, breeding, staking, and unstaking, all of those actions have blockchain fees associated with them. We're working right now, one of the meetings that we had with Solana was working on a way that we can try and reduce these fees because we're paying, this month, we're gonna pay about $75,000 in SOL fees, blockchain fees, just to do all those transactions on your behalf. It's 6 times more expensive than it was back then. A lot of the development that we're doing right now is just kind of trying to compensate for what everybody is having an issue with across Solana. I mean, if you go to Phantom and try and make a transaction, it's failing every time, right? Like now Phantom is not as in beta as we are. So you just figure that it's the blockchain. And when something like this happens to us, you figure that it's Honeyland. But that's not the case necessarily. And so, yeah.
All right, so you can kind of see there are some projects out there that are getting a little frustrated to this. So really who benefits from this? When you look at these advancements in terms of scalability, one, of course, has been Base. Now, Base, of course, you look at the current structure right here, really exploding quite a bit. So one thing to watch within Base is, of course, right there, Aerodrome. And Aerodrome is, think of it as the Uniswap, the Jupiter of Solana it's the Jupiter of Base. So if you click over to Aerodrome, you see a little bit happening right here, and then boom, this explosion, all again, based on what we're seeing from the benefits of these layer 2 advancements that Dencon have basically delivered. If you look at Aerodrome in general, this, of course, is the central trading and liquidity marketplace on Base. You can actually get to this token. So it is one that is available over on Coinbase, whether it's in wallet or it's over on Coinbase directly. So that's another project that we're looking at. It has gone up quite a bit here recently, so a little bit. This is just on the daily right here as it continues to fly at around $1.35. But you can kind of look at the traffic right here. Dencon happens, and then we see kind of some of the transaction movement. All right, so if you guys remember, there was a lot of memes, bonk, etc., that really kind of dog with hat, etc., that blew up on Solana within the Phantom wallets or other dexes out there that you guys were getting these on. And what's happened is those fees have started transacting, then transaction fail. So now what's happening is we're seeing a little bit of movement within that, and now they're moving. What I wouldn't say they, but a lot of people are now considering going in and taking a look at what's happening in the Base ecosystem. So there's Normie, Dog and Me, Mamba, Degen, several in there, Benji. So you can kind of see these all, again, are coming in on Base. So I want to go to a clip that goes in further on this about someone who is really kind of trying to understand, not Coinbase, but in this particular case, Coinbase, but crypto today, because it's quite a bit different than it was just a little bit of time ago. Listen in.
Here's my experience with Coinbase. About 5 years ago, may have been 6 years ago, a friend convinced me to buy 1/10 of a Bitcoin. He said, don't buy a whole Bitcoin, you'll just buy 1/10 of a Bitcoin. So I set up an account on Coinbase, and I tried to buy 1/10 of a Bitcoin. I think the Bitcoin was then at about 11,000, so I tried to spend $1,000 roughly. And you guys had controls in place that day I could only spend 700 because you had to verify my credit card. You'd only let me spend 700. So I spent 700 on Bitcoin. And I got up the next morning and it was worth 300. And I thought, God did not put me on earth to invest in Bitcoin. So I forgot about it. Along comes Brian Armstrong, the date for this show, and I thought, I wonder. By a miracle, I had saved my password. I checked my account. It's still there.
How much is it?
And now it's worth a little over $3,000.
Okay.
And not only that, the displays, I mean, it's attractively done.
All right, so this is somebody that understands, this is a long-term game, and evolution begins. And now people are starting to learn a little bit more about this importance of these layer 2s, because transactions are going to be the lifeblood of crypto. Listen into this clip.
The internet had to do a few things. First, people don't remember this. The internet started off with just IP addresses, and those are kind of machine readable, but they're not human readable. We now have things that are more human readable, and I can talk about what some of those are. The second thing we had to do was actually get it to be more scalable. So the internet, remember, it kind of went through dial-up to broadband.
Right.
And you could load like a page of text or something on dial-up, but on broadband, you could start to have more interactive applications. Crypto is going through its own kind of dial-up to broadband moment, which is, in crypto, it's called going from layer 1 to layer 2. And then the other big thing that needed to get the internet to broad adoption was the web browser, right? And so there was this moment with Netscape and the early browsers that kind of opened up the aperture of how many people could use the internet without even caring about the underlying technology. And so crypto is, I think it's yet to maybe have that moment where how do we make this easy and accessible to a broad range of people? And that's part of what Coinbase is trying to do with our self-custodial wallet, which I can talk about if you want. But anyway, I think those three pieces are going to probably, when we look back on crypto in 5-10 years, we'll say those were kind of similar moments that led to, okay, eventually we got to a couple billion people using it every day.
Now, I'm not going to jump to it and say, hey, listen, that's exactly what Brian is trying to explain to this interviewer. And the interviewer looked a little bit dazed and still a little bit confused. And it's much like what many people were in the beginning of the internet. Simply meaning, if you're watching our show right now, you're super early on what's happening in this technology. Because there's not a lot of people that have understood what, one, scalability is, and really where this becomes mainstream is when it becomes to fade in the background. Now, many people would say, well, wait a minute, doesn't Bitcoin fix this? Bitcoin is, it's the one truly holy grail of crypto. Not necessarily. If you look at a lot of critics out there still claiming, and we agree that Bitcoin, if you're talking about the layer 2 of Bitcoin or the payment architecture of Bitcoin, you're talking about the Lightning Network. And further in here, one of the things, in short, critics believe that the Lightning Network is slowly dying. Now, that's the problem, because anytime you're dealing with this, which I think is why we're seeing so much innovation coming around layer 2 options for Bitcoin. And that I agree with. That I think is a technology that is much needed, because as Bitcoin continues to accelerate in popularity, especially in these ETFs, you're going to need the capacity of transactions. And if you truly ever get to a payment layer for Bitcoin, you're going to have speed. None of those exist today. So that is one of the challenges that continues to be an issue with Bitcoin. Now, Ethereum is the other one. This, of course, is Vitalik talking about some of the things he's watching. One of the things that he's been talking about a couple of times is ENS. ENS is, think of that as the GoDaddy of crypto. ENS, Ethereum Name Service. This is another project out there we've talked about many times, but they also showing some very significant interest here on projects like this. And it continues to showcase, because there's a lot of examples that are showing the evolution of where crypto is going. And I think this is just another one that kind of aligns with that. Then if you think about something that even the smartest guys out there in the world, this is Elon Musk, and he was kind of referencing what was happening with Vitalik, because Vitalik kind of jumped off and then came back on Twitter. And you'll notice something that Elon is now starting to learn about something called Farcaster. Now, Farcaster is a decentralized social media network, in essence, that drives on a platform called Warpcast, Warpcast being the app, which you can download today and use, just very similar to what a Twitter is, and it's a decentralized social media. So as you can see, these are the early days of a lot of these technologies starting to advance up to the next level. I want to wrap up with a couple of clips here, and I want to go to this next one because it kind of showcases a little bit more about how people are recognizing what's happening and realizing they're here at the beginning of the internet. Listen in.
Brian, when I began prepping for this show, I didn't understand it, but I go through my reading list, which you kindly provided, and you know what? A very strange thing happened. I began to see that certain arguments for crypto are really strong. So transactions, if you're a merchant over here in the shopping mall, every time somebody uses a credit card, you end up paying the credit card company 2%. You could drop that to almost zero. The benefits are enormous, right? And then here's the one, because of my background, the old journalism model has just collapsed. You used to sell the news against ads, but now Google has taken all the ads away. So your Wall Street Journal and the New York Times are selling subscriptions, and they sell and sell and sell, and they can't get over 2 or 3 million people, when you know that in a country of 330 million, there are many tens of millions who'd be interested in this article. You can do microtransactions, so I can pay 10 cents because that article interests me, or a penny. You begin to see the things that crypto makes possible, and you end up with the question, why hasn't this been more widely adopted already?
The reality is just that, is that many people they just don't understand the tech, and there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think that the era of a lot of people that came in on the beginning of the internet really understood the tech, and not a lot of people were asked to understand the tech. It was only when we saw the true adoption curve take place. By then, the bell curve starts taking off, and you saw the evolution of the internet, you saw the evolution of mobile, social, everything else followed. This is where I think the market begins to understand. We have our first ETF, we have regulatory, we have almost every politician in the world talking about this asset class. And now we are getting ready to move into the adoption phase, which I think is going to be on the next bull run. Not this one, obviously, but we're going to see all the major players come in on this one, which will make it one of the biggest ones ever in terms of these asset class going ballistic. So if you're not part of the Diamond Circle, get in right now. It's a great place to get additional content. And guess what? You get to be in when everybody else isn't there yet. So that's one of the best things you can do, is just start your education process. Catch me out there on X. It's very simple. @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on Tech Broth.